So I'm Nicolas, and I work for Symfony, on Symfony. So that's how you might know me, from GitHub contributions, stuff like that. Talks also, because I do a lot of them. So I'm going to tell you the story of the last weeks, month, about what we did with the community on this topic, config formats. It's a very old topic, you'll figure out. Of course, who knew, who played with Symfony 2 already? Yeah, some of you. So you know how to write a service by hand, let's say, in a YAML file, maybe XML file, stuff like that. So I'm going to tell you about the developer experience, which is a topic that Ryan started like more than 10 years ago in a seminal blog post where he started this developer experience initiative. So that's the title of his blog post at the moment, making the Symfony experience exceptional. And we are trying to follow his lead on this topic. And then I read, of course, the blog post again. And there is this sentence, and I love it. It's how we can do that. How do we achieve a better developer experience? It's by being aggressive, by focusing on beginners. And that's what we are always trying to do when we try to improve Symfony and think about, hey, how could we make things simpler? And so that's the story. So one big milestone for the Symfony developer experience was the introduction of Symfony Flex. It was in 2017. And Symfony Flex introduced this config file. So config services YAML file, I'm sure you've already opened this one, maybe not with this exact same content, because this is the content that we had in 3.3. And since then, we made some improvements to the default configuration. You know that there are some differences today, because there are a lot of concepts behind this, like public false. Why did we have to have this line? And then exclusion, like exclude and this long list of stuff to exclude. What does this mean? And the last, at the bottom of the screen, discovering controllers in a special way. Why do controllers need these lines, right? So all those questions, we questioned ourselves, and we figured out that there was a way to actually drop those lines. So if you start a new project nowadays, you will have this content. Removed lines are gone, and the file has shrinked. It's better, more seamless, more, clean. And the rest is what, we have mechanism behind so that we don't need them anymore. We did, of course, the same for the routing configuration. So here you have not the first one. The first one at the beginning, we didn't know how to have default routes for controllers. You had to write the configuration by hand, even in 2017. And so now we have that since quite a few versions now, and it says controllers are still special. They still need special care, and Symfony still needs to know that we are going to store them in this source controller folder under a namespace, app controller, and attribute means look for attributes, of course. The previous version was looking for annotations, obviously. You don't have the next slide in your project, in your application at the moment, because that's a new feature of 7.4. The drawback of this approach, of this configuration, it's that if you decide if you want to put the controllers somewhere else, you have to tweak the configuration, right? And so someone opened an issue on Symfony saying, hey, can we do something about that? I would like to be able to put my controller anywhere, and that's a controller Symfony should be able to figure out. And we actually figured out how to do it. And so the next iteration, 7.4, will start with this. And this is basically enabling the system so that it can look at the root attributes found on your classes. And when the class has this root attribute, it means that's a controller. That's what this does. And so now you can put controllers anywhere. I'm not saying you should put them anywhere. It means it is your responsibility now to give the structure to the project, and Symfony will not force you to have this structure. And so we continued. What's next? So the next topic is about YAML. You know, config services YAML, routes.yaml. If you look at the documentation, this is a random page in the documentation, that's the messenger component, but the topic is not about messenger. The topic is about configuration. If you open the doc, you have this. This is the default configuration that comes with a Flex recipe when you install the messenger component. And this one declares, stuff for the messenger routing. And there is something I don't like. It's that. There are tabs. You can click and you can say, hey, by the way, you can use XML to say the same. Do you like that? Who is using that? Nobody. Great, thanks. And there is this one also. And this one is about a PHP format, which is new, not that new, but not much used because we don't promote it as the default. Have you heard that some people think, have you heard about some people saying that the YAML format is deprecated? Have you heard about that? Yes, some of you? So there are people that say YAML is deprecated, the future is this. Right? That's not correct. I mean, that's not a statement from the Symfony core team. That's a statement from the future. So maybe that's someone coming from the future, I don't know. We are not there yet. This format is really nice because you have then a fluent interface and you can discover the possible options just by having the code editor suggest you the next method that is available after you type the arrow, right? It is experimental because it is not much used because it doesn't play really well with Flex recipes. Because Flex is going to patch those files automatically, adding entries in the YAML files. And this is way much more complex to do in PHP than in YAML, because in YAML you add lines, you add the correct indentation, and done. You're done with inserting lines in this file. Inserting lines in a PHP file where you might have decided that the code style doesn't fit your preference, so you change everything, you add ifs around, code logic, etc., we're lost. Any tool automation would be lost with this format. It's still nice because, of course, you can also have use statements, reference constants quite easily, stuff like that. So that's maybe a future target. Keep that in mind. The first problem I have with this documentation page is this, what is called option paralysis. It's like, hey, I have 3 choices. How can I decide? So I'm a beginner. I have 3 choices. And then I clicked on the XML tab. I'm lost, right? So that's what we need to kill, basically. So ideally, we would have only one, or ideally, we would have no configuration, but I don't think that's possible. So let's start with XML. That's the one that is the most easy to think about because nobody raised their hand, so I know I'm safe. It's a long topic. You raised your hand, right? Yeah, I will tell you about that. So, following this mindset, Grégoire opened this issue saying, hey, let's deprecate and remove support for semantic XML configuration. So semantic XML configuration is about using XML to configure the messenger tree or the firewall security tree or any config tree that nobody uses in XML, right? So that's the starting point of this recent initiative. Deprecating support for XML. And so 1 month later, maybe 2, Mathieu opened this pull request saying, hey, I looked at XML file loaders in the source code. I found 4 of them in dependency injection, routing, serializer, validation, and let's deprecate them all. Right? Are you fine with that? No? Yes? It needs a bit more thinking. But before that, I was like, hey, this is great. Let's go 1 step further. Let's remove any dependency on the XML extension. And that's nice for beginners, because if you can remove an extension, a mandatory extension, when starting a Symfony project, it means it's easier to start. Less extension to have, like, as a failure when running Composer, install, yeah, I forgot enabling the XML one, right? So for beginners, that's cool. And of course, the next step is dropping completely any XML stuff in Symfony. You'll see it's not exactly possible. But it's still being aggressive, and that's what we need to, the way we need to think about this topic. So, before considering merging the pull request, we did this self-impact analysis. There is a dog because it's like eat your own dog food, right, the expression. And so, of course, we use XML for services and bundle configuration, and I know that API platform is defining all the services using XML files. In Symfony, we used to have XML files, and we moved that to the PHP Fluent configuration format that I showed you before. It works really well, and I think the bundle ecosystem can do it. You don't care about that. It's in the vendor folder. It's just a different loader. You won't, this won't impact you directly. Same for the routes, of course. Then we also have XML for declaring validation constraints. So saying on this class, I want this group or this constraint to be applied. At the moment in your applications, you might use, and you are likely using attributes, right? Assert, length, assert, not blank, assert, email, etc. This doesn't work for bundles. Bundles cannot use those annotations, those attributes. They have to use currently XML or YAML. There is no other configuration format. And I wouldn't advise them to move from XML to YAML. That wouldn't be fair. Like, that's not much better. That's just different. So we are not looking to make things different. We are looking for making things better. Okay, still continuing. Translation, XLIF format. This one has to be XML because the standard is not a Symfony one. So this one won't ever be deprecated. We have to pass this format. Then we are also using XML for the PHP Storm plugin. When you run bin console, when you start a Symfony application, the container is dumped as a PHP class, you know that, compiled. And it's also dumped as an XML file. And in the XML, I think you might want to open it in your application if you never did so. If you open it, you will see all the definitions for your services in your applications. So your services, but the services added by bundles also. And this is super useful information for plugins. A plugin can load that XML, and then the PHP Storm plugin will provide you with nice auto-completion when you're using the container or anything related to services, because it will know about the services. This is not something we want to break. Of course, we want the plugin to continue to work. And the next and the last item on my list is the debug lint command. There is a one or two other. They do require access to the XML dump at the moment to display the list of possible services in your application and stuff like that. So that's what we need to kind of think about and work on to achieve this target we have in mind. So let me start by the bottom of the list. And the bottom of the list is starting with that. So this is a pull request where I changed the container builder debug dump pass, which is the code that dumps and generates this XML for the plugin. And now, next to the XML file, we also generate just a plain PHP serialized string put into a file. So we take the container, we serialize it. You see there is a big serialize call in the middle of the screen, and we write that to the disk. And that's good because then debug lint, the command line, can just use unserialize to get the same content. Problem one solved. Next step, the PHP Storm plugin. So dumping XML is nicely done using this object-oriented API, the DOM API. You know, we have an object, we say append node, add attribute, etc. So we have a nice object-oriented API. At some point, and here in this pull request, we just replace calling this API by concatenating strings. That works because in the end, XML is just strings, right? So we did the change, and the benefit is that we don't have any need for the XML extension for this specific task anymore. So one less thing that keeps us at using the extension. The change isn't much. You see the diff, like it's like plus 220 minus 210, 11. That's almost the same code. It's just a different style. So one less thing. Let's continue. So translation, I told you about that. Let's focus on validation constraints, serializer metadata. On this topic, it's about self-analyzing what Symfony itself needs. And I didn't know that, but I discovered that there is still one place, that's the only one, remaining where Symfony has to load an XML file. It's loading this file. And this is a validation constraint metadata about the form component. That's part of how the form component and the validation component interact, and how the validation component knows how to validate a form. Basically, there is this constraint that says, on class name form, add the constraint blah blah, and this enables the validation logic on your forms. So it's critical. And we don't have anything better than XML. We have YAML or XML. So, missing piece, and that's the fix. What I want to do at this point is being able to use an attribute, because why not? I have a class in the form component. I'm used to attributes in my application, in my own code. Why not in Symfony? So this is the pull request doing that. I'm adding here the attributes. And what is missing, and what the pull request also does, so you have to trust me, I don't have the slide on that, I won't show you the code, that's what I mean. This is also making this discoverable at compilation time. So basically, it's a new config format for validations that Bundle will be able to use very soon. We are using it for framework, for the form component, and then any other Cilius, Sulu, I know there are big consumers of this stuff, they will be able to move from XML to attributes. To declare that, so I added the attributes, but then I need to make the container, the compiler aware that it needs to look for attributes on this class, and this is how you do it. So this is using the PHP config format. This creates a resource definition. It's not a service. The form class doesn't implement something that's a service. I would call that a resource definition. And we say, hey, here is a resource, and look for validator attribute metadata means looks for attributes there at compilation, during the compilation of the container. And that's it. Job done. That's a new feature of Send4. Enjoy. Of course, the same issue exists for the serializer component. So this is the same call. It's a different resource tag, so resource attribute, saying this is a serializer attribute metadata. So now you can, bundles can say, let's say Cilius, hey, this is describing a product item, and I'm adding serialization groups on these properties. They do that using XML at the moment, and now they will be able to move in some future version to attributes. The sidekick with that, and that's also another stuff that I discovered. I'm not very much aware of these subsystems. I guess you might not be, or you might be, but I discovered that Cilius, for example, allows you to add extra constraints on their own entity classes. In the vendor folder, there is a model in Cilius, in Sulu, and they have a doc page explaining, hey, by the way, if you want validation to happen differently for the user objects that we describe on our side, you can do it. Just create a new XML file in config validation folder of your application and write metadata about that. Or YAML, and that's it. Now, you can create a class, and this is, there you see, it's an abstract class. The class is just a struct, a tree that you are not going to use ever directly in your application. It's just a tree so that we can add stuff on this tree, like class name, properties, getters, setters. And you add attributes like you are used to, but there is this special attribute at the top which says, hey, the attributes on this class, they are not for this class. They are for this other class. And this is how this class can extend the constraint for this target class. And so maybe you're not going to use that directly, but I know that it's something we have to provide in Symfony so that then we can unlock this drop XML dream. So we did the same for the serializer metadata. So that's exactly the same concept. I won't much explain it. You already get it for validation, I hope. I tried to. And then we removed the part about validation and serialization from the initial pull request. I said, hey, let's deprecate everything about XML. That's not possible for validator and serializer. The reason is that the alternative, that I just showed you, doesn't exist yet. So how can you deprecate something without providing the alternative or by providing it in the future? That's not possible. We would put the ecosystem in an impossible situation where they would have to bump to 7.4 to be able to rely on that. That's just not possible. So we have to wait a few more years, maybe 4, maybe we'll see, before this happens. We are used to such timescales. Yeah. So validator, this is closed. This one is closed. We might reopen it in a few years. But still, we made some progress. So next is services, bundles, and routes. And this is what remains from this pull request. So this one is, this is a screenshot from this morning. And so this is the current state. And we are still having some discussion about how we want to make it happen, if we want to make it happen now, or if we want to delay that. But I'm lobbying quite a lot, because I think this is really the way to go. So that's done for XML. We have a clear path where we can free ourselves from XML by default or XML at all. What remains is YAML and PHP. So we have two choices here still. So let's see what we can improve on each of them. Let's start with YAML. That's the most common one and what we use at the moment. So if we can improve YAML today, we can improve YAML for everybody. I didn't show you the first line in my previous slide. You know, you've already seen this slide, except the first line. This is the actual new services YAML file in 7.4. And the new line is something that your code editor might understand. PHP Storm does understand this line. And it says to PHP Storm, hey, by the way, look at this JSON schema file. It's going to give you the structure that the YAML file should follow. And this works. And that's great, because then PHP Storm will be able to validate the tree that you have in your YAML file and also to provide you with auto-completion. So this is the beginning of this schema file. And I asked Storm LLM to help me with that because I'm not fluent in schema, JSON schema. But I don't care. What matters is at the end, I can review that and that it provides what we want. And what we want is that's the experience I want. I don't know about you, but that's exactly what I want when I work with YAML, and I'm missing that a lot today. Maybe with some fancy plugin, this is already possible, but that's with a plugin, something that is difficult to maintain, that is outside, and now you will try in 7.4 and you will get that. That's great, don't you think? So, of course, we did the same for the routing file and the same for validation and serialization. So if you write validation and serialization metadata constraint in YAML, you will also have the same experience, but I guess nobody will use that. But we are still doing it for like covering completely the domain. And the next step is this one. So that's another pull request that is open. And this one is someone, actually that's how this started. I showed you the JSON schema, but I worked on that topic after learning that it was possible. And I learned that it was possible thanks to this person who submitted this pull request. And here he had a way more involving goal, because the goal, what he's trying to do here is to look at every bundle, to look at which configuration tree they declare on their side. We call that semantic configuration. So messenger, transports, so this is a tree. And so every bundle can declare a configuration tree. And this pull request is trying to turn this configuration tree, which is an abstract memory model of this concept, into an actual JSON schema. And the schema would be generated when compiling the container. This is already what we do for the PHP configuration format I showed you. You know, we have these methods, the Fluent interface. This is code that is generated automatically from this configuration tree description, and we're trying to use exactly the same definition to generate JSON schema. So this is not done yet. I'm not sure we are going to be able to make it ready for 7.4. I'm going to try to work on that. But I think we will achieve it at some point. And this means that you will have auto-completion for any config tree. I don't know about you, but I always struggle remembering about which options are possible. How do I validate my stuff? How do I discover that, I didn't know. It's possible to do that, really? Oh, cool. So, yeah, that's great also. We need to be thinking from the future a bit, but it's not too far. It's not a very far future. So, yeah, I would really, really, really love to have that very soon. So that means YAML, we still love YAML. It still provides the experience, the packaged experience that we want, especially the flex experience, plus now improving that with validation and auto-completion. So let's talk a bit about PHP, which is the remaining format. So PHP, as a reminder, this is what we have at the moment. I told you, this is great. This works really great for bundles, like Symfony is using that internally. But it doesn't work for applications because it doesn't work with, I would say, automatically patching those files. Which PHP format could we imagine that would improve the situation? Can you think about that? Arrays. A tree is an array. An array is a tree. So, Zen Framework 1, right? Zen Framework 1 was using trees, plain PHP arrays, to declare the configuration. So we are back 20 years from now. Are we? No, we are not. Because we do not want to lose everything I told you that we have with YAML. We do not want to lose validation. We do not want to lose auto-completion. We don't want to lose the experience that we have with YAML. Never. So we won't get back. You can use actually PHP arrays since always in Symfony. But nobody does because it has this bad developer experience, smell, feeling, and so no, it's a no. So what we are working on, and that's Alexandre who is trying to work on that, improving that, is to generate array shapes. So here you see this is one iteration. We are not done yet exactly on how you will use that stuff. But here you see this, we generated a function which is called web profiler. And this function has one array argument. And what matters is at the top, there is this array shape that describes what is possible, what is expected from the array. And there you see there is one which is called, one option called toolbar. And then if you put something there, it has two keys, enabled Ajax replace, intercept redirects, excluded Ajax path. This is the config tree defined by the bundle. And then we want to make this work. We want you to be able to say, I'm calling web profiler, opening the bracket, and then immediately PHP Storm can tell you, hey, okay, which one do you want? Toolbar, intercept redirects, or excluded path? Right? That'd be awesome, don't you think? So to make this work, we had to shake the ecosystem a bit. What is inside this array shape is unusual for array shapes. Two things, at least. One is having a comment in a comment. You see there is a comment at the end. It says profile or toolbar configuration, default false, and etc. So this is in the configuration tree. And this is a comment in the comment, and this wasn't supported until recently by either PHP Stan or PHP Storm. And so we called PHP Stan, we called PHP Storm. We told them, we have a target, you're blocking us, please help us. And they did. They are part of the ecosystem. Another one that they didn't work is the nested array shape. Under toolbar, you have an array there, and PHP Storm didn't support that. It does since the latest version. That's because we found Roman, saying, hello, Roman, we need your help again. Can you help, tell your team that this should be high priority in the backlog? And he did so, and so now we have that. So that's pretty much incredible to have, to be able as a community to improve the ecosystem, not just for Symfony, but Symfony pushing the boundaries of what can be done with the tooling that we have. And so that's our short-term dream. What we're working on in the community a lot, there are many more stuff, but that's the topic of the day. So if we achieve these arrays, we'll have auto-completion, we'll have static analysis by PHP Storm or PHP Stan or any other tool that understands array shapes. You will, of course, be able to benefit from the basic PHP language, which means use statements at the top of the file, so short class names in the middle, being able to reference a constant. I don't know about you, but that's something I don't like in YAML, referencing a constant. So who can tell me how we do that? Exclamation mark, PHP / const, and then the fully qualified class name. I need to go to the other side of the screen, right? And then const. So, of course, symbol referencing is about use statements, but it's also about refactoring stuff, figuring out where in your application you are using this class you want to rename. At the moment, it's like screen PHP code, and don't forget about YAML, because maybe, right? So this should provide a better experience, and the automated patching is the extra condition, extra criteria we add on top of this list that you will benefit directly from. The last one is the core team saying, we also want this stuff to work with Flex. And arrays, that's easy to patch, right? Everything is still going to be compile time, so there is no difference in this regard versus YAML. So we will read these arrays once. So if you put extra logic there, don't. You might be already used to that, and if you do, it won't work, so just don't. So, yeah, damn, this community is awesome. I don't know if you have this feeling. I do when I go at conferences like today, these 2 days. I'm like, wow, this is really, really great. We are all a bunch of passionate people. So here, of course, on all those screens, there are like 10th of Symfony contributors behind the slides. I named a few ones, but there are way more. I named PHP Stan, so that's Andre working on that tirelessly. That's also, I mentioned Roman and his team for JetBrains, so that's great. There will always be Ryan for the inspiration, because Ryan is the guy that told us and taught us that developer experience is not a second thought, it must be first. And I will never forget that, of course. And many more, of course, because we are building on the shoulder of giants, right? So thank you very much. I hope you will join me in this experiment, stuff, discussion. See you maybe in SymfonyCon Amsterdam. Let's build the future together. Thank you.